So welcome back to another Money Brewster Trade Analysis podcast. Tyler Simmons is with me again, and we are into a new year. So we will be discussing the off-season deals that were made. And if you're following along in the forums, these are the deals that are dated in real life February 7th to February 19th. However, in game, they're deals that are made between November 3rd of 2029 and February 25th of 2031. So welcome back, Tyler. And as sorry.
That's okay. Thanks for having me. I just want to remind everybody: don't listen to this while you're driving. Any accidents you get into because you fall asleep listening to us is not our problem.
Right. I think there's a handful of people in the league who enjoy listening to talk about it, and there's probably there maybe a little few more people who just don't care. And that's fine. We do this. You and I do this because it's fun, and hopefully a few other people enjoy it while we're doing it. And as always, it really would be nice someday to have another person besides just you and me, because it's always like you make a whole bunch of deals, and then I talk about your deals, and then you talk about your deals, and then we make fun of Brett and talk about Brett's deals, and then Rec makes deals. It's the same people over and over again. But the first one we're gonna get to was I guess I'll take the lead on this one. This was Louisville and Phoenix, and essentially Louisville. There's a few deals in here that are just Louisville shedding salary. They had some players they wanted to get back in free agency and got into a bit of a cap crunch, so they started moving some older players, and this is where they shipped Manny Bautista to Phoenix. And it's a pretty minor move, honestly, because of where Manny Bautista is at this point in his career. But he's Manny Bautista, so I think it's worth talking about. He's 34 years old now, and he's kind of lumped down to 6, 7, 8 ratings. He's was pitching like I think 91 to 93 or maybe even 92, 94, but now he's in the like 88 miles an hour average range, and his stuff is pretty mediocre. His changeup is really his only good pitch anymore, but he's a lefty, and sometimes these guys stick around for a while. He's making a decent amount, $13.9 million this year, $13.72 next year. That's a team option. And I think the thing we're talking about here is this is not a bad pickup for Phoenix. Like it's worth a shot. If they have the cap space, it makes sense, and they give up nothing. I'm going to skip the grades on this, but
I agree too. That's kind of my thought. If they have the ability to pay his salary, if they have enough revenue, it's a great pickup because like 5 years ago, everybody thought Manny Bautista was on his way out of the league, and here he is 5 productive seasons later, still relevant and pushing towards 200. So it'd be kind of cool if he gets 200 wins this year with Phoenix and has a decent season before kind of tailing off.
Right, and he's not the pitcher he was even 5 years ago when they thought he was out of the league. But if you look at the free agent pitching was expensive this year. Like the starters were pricey, I think, at least in the initial part. I think people got some bargains later. And if you've got a little bit of cash to spare, this isn't a long-term deal, so you can blow a little bit of extra money and put an arm in the rotation that you probably don't feel too tremendously terrible about. So there's not a whole lot more to go about that one. The next deal. I wanted to talk about a little bit, and again, it's a minor move, but I think it's worth talking about more to the mechanics of the deal, because this one actually perplexes me a little bit. Maybe Tyler, you got some better ideas what's going on in this one, because I wasn't sure. This was a Valencia Brooklyn deal in which Valencia picked up second baseman Luis Medina. He's a 27-year-old right-handed bat. He's got 6'7", 7.55 ratings, kind of mediocre speed. And he's a pretty bad defender, and he can also play left field badly. And he's making $2.4 million. He's got a couple more years of team control. He's got an 82 career OPS plus, and it looks like he's been a platoon. So that's not even like in general. That's his strong side is giving him, an 82 OPS plus. And I don't have a reason. And we'll talk about what Brooklyn got back for this. But I don't know why Valencia would make this move. They've got Tubby Soto and Harlan Moore, who are both excellent middle infielders, and they've got to play somewhere. And then they had a third baseman, who in Manny Sliva, who is better than Luis Medina and cheaper, and has team control left. And I don't know. Like I don't know if you looked at this one much or had any ideas about that. I didn't really.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know what the thing for Valencia was, unless they just didn't have confidence in those two middle infielders. If they just thought that they needed somebody to come in and play second base for a year or two. I don't really know the point of it either. I guess maybe they're just trying to get some depth, and the contract's not that bad, and he's a pretty good player for the contract. He's just not somebody that you would want to give any value, any kind of assets up for. So.
Right, and I'm a big defense guy, and this is the reason it blows me. I really don't get this one, is that Medina's a bad defender at second. They could have had excellent defenders at second and short and a plus defender at third, and now they've just got a crappy second baseman. I don't
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I've done better than expected the last 2 years, I think, mainly because of having above average defense. So I place a lot of value on defense, especially up the middle. So I kind of feel the same way you do, but not everybody feels that same way. Some people value that power bat, and having a second baseman that can hit 20 home runs might be more valuable than a second baseman that's going to have a +4 ZR to them.
I don't know. I think everyone should
Easier
just
to
agree
see,
with me.
for some people. It's kind of what you're looking for in a player. Not really what I look for, but it's hard to also argue with, Valencia's been doing all right. So
yeah, and there is more than one way to do this, and that's a good point. I'm not trying to beat him up or pick it apart here. To me, it's a little bit of a curious move, and you're right. Sometimes those home runs out of second base are valuable. I mean, Andre Wellington made a career out of it, and I had a great year out of him 1 year, so it's not unreasonable. The player Brooklyn got was a center fielder, Cesar Reynoso, and he's essentially a 20-year-old left-handed bat who can defend all the outfield positions, and he's a fourth outfielder that's primarily there for defense, maybe even a fifth, but he's somebody you could put on a major league roster. Oh, the other reason I want to talk about this trade is to see if you knew a little bit more about this. He has a 9 bunt for hit. You don't see that often, where people actually are rated well at that in an OTP. Have you seen that work? Like, have you ever had people that you played with the sliders and saw if you could get him bunting to get on all the time?
I've never tried to do it. Maybe he's somebody that could do it with the 10 sacrifice and 9 bunt for hit.
And he's fast.
But the one thing that I don't know if the base running instincts would have anything to do with it. I don't know if that would kind of hinder him because he's not great in his base running, or if that's just solely on being able to get doubles and triples. Or I don't know if that kind of factors into it either. That's an interesting take. I've never really looked at it that way.
No, I haven't either. I mean, occasionally you see a player that's rated highly with that, and I really just don't like bunting in general. I think it's just one of the most boring parts of baseball. And then since we don't have pitchers bunting, it's I don't know. And being a Cardinals fan and having to watch Mike Matheny bunt in weird, terrible situations with a team that can't bunt, I just have learned to hate bunting. And maybe I'm a little wrong about that, but it just drives me nuts.
Yeah, it might be a way for Brooklyn to kind of work him into the lineup sometime down the road as a center fielder that can bunt and steal bases. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wondered if anybody's messed around with an OTP. Maybe someone will be nice enough to comment and tell me I'm an idiot and it doesn't work. So I think after that we get to the first trade of the offseason where a decent number of parts moved, and I can't remember. Is this one of the ones you said you wanted to do, or was that me?
No, I think I was going to take the next one.
Oh, the next one. Okay, well I can go back. This is actually my deal. This is a deal with Havana that, in retrospect, after reading the media guide this year, looks like maybe a little bit better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it might be.
So I got Chip Saunders, who's a player I'd had my eye on since he was in Atlantic City, because I am one of those people who likes catcher defense, and we've talked ad nauseum about whether or not it matters in OOTP, and maybe recently we got a little bit of information that seems to indicate that it does. I don't know. It's still pretty darn tough to tell. It seems to be not very obvious. But Chip Saunders is 23. He's mostly developed. He tops out at 6 contact and 5 power, and he's missing 1 each on both of those. And he's a lefty with a positive lefty split, and that's always weird. You don't know how those guys are going to hit, and you wish they had that nice positive righty split, and he doesn't. So I don't ever think he'll be much more than an adequate hitter at the catcher position. But he has incredible intangibles, and if his defense matters, I'm perfectly happy playing him. And I just want to jump in real quick. Yeah. I would say
if he's a lefty that gets to the point where he's 6'6", 6'6" against righties, and somebody that can hit like a 680 to 700 OPS, I think he's going to be a fantastic player because of that defense. Learning through that study that I did, learning that it does help the pitching staff, which is something that you're really focusing on at your park. You really want to focus on the pitchers. I think he'll be a great player. He may never hit worth a damn, but nobody's going to hit worth a damn in your park. So, that he's going to help out your defense. He's going to be great in the clubhouse. He'll never cause any problems as far as that's concerned. So, I think it's a good pickup for you. It's not necessarily a good pickup for everybody in the league.
Right, and that's the big thing. He's a player that fits into my system, and he has more value for me than he has for some other people. Havana didn't need him. They had I always forget this. I can't remember the guy's name, but they had another catching up who's not as good of a defender, but still pretty good. Also lefty hitter and a better hitter. So this was a trade where they had a part they didn't need, and I kind of sent back to them kind of a smorgasbord of prospects. And I wasn't trying to go after the new guy and get something unfair out of him, but I had trouble figuring out what Sanders' value is. And so I sent a handful of guys of varying talent levels. I sent Rob Snyder, who's a 22-year-old righty with kind of 8'6", 7 talents. He's almost there, but his change might be stuck. So he might stick at 7'6", which means he'll have to be like an 8'6" or a 9'6" reliever, which can make him a middle relief type. So I think he has value kind of regardless, even if he doesn't develop his change. It's just not his high top end if he doesn't get there. The other player I sent was that's actually a lot more interesting is Zach Martinez. He was I think he's 18 now, and he was a scouting find, and he did lump a little bit after I got him. He initially had like 8 contact, 8 gap, 7 power. He now has like 7.7, 6.38. But he's fast. And he may be able to play his way into playing center field. He's working on that. His range isn't quite there yet. But he's
I think his real value is at shortstop. I think they can move him to short.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. And I thought he looked more like a second baseman because I think his arm was a 4. But he's bumped his range twice. He's bumped his arm twice. And the 6 is kind of a weak arm for short. But with the 10 range, I mean, if he could really be a great shortstop or even a second baseman in this league. Or I don't know about great, but he could be a good everyday player. So there's some value there. Eugenio Fugazi's a left fielder who has bumped once, and he's 6'6", 6 and a 7. If he bumps again, he's actually a starter. He may not. He may never develop, but he's kind of a lottery ticket type. And then the last player in the deal was a lottery ticket type pitcher who I think when we made the deal was he has gotten a little worse since we made the deal, but he's a 20-year-old lefty named Roberto Chavez. Who's 6'7", 8. Features a fastball slider change that should help him with batters on both sides of the plate. He kind of looked kind of like a back end starter type 4 or 5 kind of guy, although some of those lefties play up a little bit. So I made the deal, so I thought it was a fair deal. I kind of gave us both Bs for B minuses for the talent level, and organizationally, I thought it was a good move for both of us because those guys were all blocked, and they were getting older, and they were about to age out of my minors, and someone, except for Martinez, who I needed to give some sort of a good higher end prospect in this move. I don't know what you thought of the deal or.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I hated the deal. I really was not a fan of Saunders because of that. Such a weird split as a left-handed hitter, not great ratings as a hitter. So I had traded him away. That was my first deal, actually, when I took over Greenville, was trading Chip Saunders for William Kidd and Juice Breakwell.
Oh, he came from you?
I didn't know. Got rid of him.
I knew he was in Atlantic City, and I knew he didn't start there. I didn't know he was yours. That's kind of funny. Okay.
Yeah, he was a draft pick like the year or two before I took over. So he was a top 10 draft pick. So I traded him away. I wasn't a big fan. Now sitting here 2 weeks later, I definitely can see his value a lot more to a team that's really focused on defense. But I still like the trade a lot for Havana. I think it's a fantastic trade. I don't think they could have really expected to get more out of him. because they had to find somebody that likes catcher defense first, and then be able to get a handful of good prospects. And that system is still pretty bereft of talent. I mean, it's getting better, but it's still pretty empty. So to pick up 4 guys that have legitimate shots, obviously they have some warts. Snyder needs to develop the changeup. You got an 18-year-old guy that still has a ton of development to do. Fugazi's, a shot in the dark. But if he has positive split, if he develops a positive split and gets 7 contact or 7 power, he turns into a guy that you could legitimately have as a 4th outfielder.
Right.
And then Chavez is, again, a shot in the dark. He's a guy with a great changeup potential and no stuff and no movement. So, he's not likely to develop, but he's a chance. He's only 20. He can still develop, and he's lefty. So if he bumps a little bit of velocity and fills out that changeup, he's a guy that could be a lefty reliever at the very least. So I think it was great for them. I would have, probably given the similar grades to what you did, maybe a half a grade less, just because I still, don't know how much that value is as far as catcher defense goes. Obviously, it's better, but is it better than having a great shortstop? Or who knows?
I don't know. And I didn't need a shortstop because I've got DeFazio there, who's coming up recently for a while, and that was part of the whole thing. Is these just players are going to be blocking my system. But Martinez could be someone I regret letting go. He's got versatility, and he looks like he could. He's young, but he looks like he could be a good player. Moving on, you were going to take the next one, although this trade also involves both. This is like turning into like where you and I talk about the trades that we make.
Talk about our trades constantly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm obviously a pretty high volume trader. This is one where you've been concerned about Skip for going on 12 in-game months now, and I need a closer. Obviously Gardner was not very good for me, so I pulled the trigger on taking the risk of the expensive closer in his last year, picking up Skip, and basically just kind of a waiver pickup in Angel Alanis,
yeah, something like that,
for Mike Manning, who has been talked about ad nauseum on the forums by me, mainly just complaining about how he's lumped. But it's really just me taking on risk and you kind of getting rid of that risk so you can spend that money elsewhere. I think it is a great trade for you because you're concerned about Skip falling apart, which he kind of has since he's come over to me. And you really don't lose anything else. And Hell is somebody that you weren't planning on keeping anyway and was going to have to expose to waivers, I assume.
Right.
And I don't really lose much in Manning because he's only going to be a lefty reliever at best right now. So I would say for you, I would have given you, an A minus organizational because you give yourself so much flexibility. You pick up a popular player to cushion that fan interest hit, which doesn't actually happen, I guess, in OTP 17 now that we found out.
Oh, no, I took a huge hit for this. I just didn't get any games.
No, you take a hit, but you didn't get a bump for picking up Manning, I bet.
Right, I've got nothing for bumps this whole offseason. I think some other people mentioned that too. It's been terrible.
That's another topic. So I don't know, some of you guys might know, I commish a different league, and somebody brought this up like 2 days before it got brought up in our league that, hey, I've been signing these popular players and I've gotten nothing out of it. And I looked over on the boards and apparently it's a big bug that has just gone completely unchecked. There's a number of people that have pointed it out and it's just never been fixed. So, yeah, so signing popular players and trading for popular players in this version does jack squat.
Awesome. That's good to know.
So it ended up not helping you the way that it should have, because it should have been great. Pick up a former number 1 pick. The fans are kind of excited about what he might be able to do, even though he's struggled. But I thought it was great organizationally. Talent-wise, obviously, it's like a C. Because you pick up a potential lefty reliever for the best save closers in the history of the game.
Yeah.
So, but I also take into the account that by the end of the season, Skip might not be, a shell of himself. So the talent lost might end up not being that big of a deal for you. For me, I would say talent-wise, probably a B plus again, not an A, just because of that potential risk. And organizationally, I would have given myself probably like a B plus. Losing Manning's not going to hurt me that much, and picking up a potential, shutdown closer is a huge help to the organization. So
I was a little harder on you organizationally, but that's part of the motivation for why I made this trade. I'm very risk adverse with old guys. I don't want them. I'm not willing to take those risks. I won't sign into contracts very often. And I realize that makes me miss out sometimes, because a lot of times those are the guys that are available, and you can actually get them at bargain rates compared to stuff in free agency if you're willing to spend the money. And I don't do it. I know that's hurt me in the past. So, maybe
my biggest thing with Skip was, at the time, I had quite a bit of cap room. I think I was at like $85 million, and I needed a good reliever. And he's the best until he started falling apart once again. So the contract on a 1-year hit isn't as big of a deal to me. I don't know if I'll end up extending him. He hasn't really talked to me, so that's going to hurt. But organizationally, it's not like Manning was actually doing anything in my organization. Right. He's like the 12th pitcher or worse. So
I think that's about where he is in mine, and he's probably worse than that because like if we've noticed with 17, it tends to rate near developed guys higher probably than it should.
So and then Angel's probably never gonna crack my big league roster. I don't know. He's on waivers anyway, so we'll see what happens if somebody grabs him or not.
Yeah, I would bet he slides through. There's a lot out there right now. You were going to take, I think, the next one too, right? Because this one's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, this one's an interesting deal here. So, in the offseason, Carolina had a lot of young first basemen and were looking to move, and they traded Mark Simpson, who was a top 30, I think, prospect at the time, to Long Beach, along with another couple of prospects, pitcher Imad bin Ibrahim, who is a pretty good reliever, a potential reliever, and then Carl Shoebotham, Shoebotham, who's another potential reliever, but not really a whole lot. And coming back to Carolina is starting pitcher Arthur Dempster, who's a right-hander, former number 1 overall pick, and really looks like a very nice prospect. Obviously, only being 20, I think he was 20 at the time of the trade, now 21. There's a little bit of risk, but he is already 6'8" along the development path, so he's got a pretty good base. He needs this changeup to develop, but he still has a solid fastball, solid forkball, with those to be potentially great pitches. A curveball that's well on its way to being a good pitch. So he has a third pitch that's not a changeup, so he could potentially, he has a lot higher potential to be an actual starting pitcher, I would say.
Right.
Simpson is a really good first baseman, a switch hitter who does have a positive split versus lefties, which is not what you're necessarily looking for in a switch hitter, but he still has good ratings. It looks like he could potentially be that 8.98 against right-handed pitchers and even better against lefties. So he looks like a legit top of the, a middle of the order starting first baseman. Those things are easy to come by if you're willing to sign guys on short-term deals and you kind of go into an off-season with a question mark at that position. But it's difficult to find somebody that you can slot into the middle of the order every single year under team control like Simpson will be. So I think it's a great pickup for Long Beach. They get their first baseman of the future, somebody that they could slot in right now if they want to. And they get a couple of relievers to kind of fill out the organizational depth in the pitcher that they lose. And, Carolina's not looking to win now, so having a first baseman that they can slot in right now isn't as valuable as it is for Long Beach. And to pick up a guy that looks like he's a very high percentage chance of developing and to be kind of the successor to Billy Chappell Jr., I think it's a great pickup. I would say I would give them almost kind of a B plus for talent as far as Carolina. Maybe a B because they were giving up a guy that's developed in Simpson, and they give up a couple of other decent, okay prospects. and obviously Dempster's another couple of years away from playing. Or sorry, did I say organizational? That would be my talent grade. The organizational grade, I think, for Carolina is an A. They trade somebody that's developed for somebody that's close to developed, so they kind of push that service time clock down the road, and they don't really give up a whole lot in those two relievers. Same thing for Long Beach. I think it's a great pickup talent-wise. I think that's an A for them to get a starting first baseman and a couple of prospects. And organizationally, I would say, it was probably a B plus, maybe a B for the same reason. Trading away a potential number one pitcher is never something you want to do, especially in exchange for a first baseman. But you're talking about a team that's in the middle of their window right now. They want to win now. They don't really care necessarily about 2 or 3 years from now as much as Carolina does.
No, and I think you hit all the. That's all my thoughts there. I think I might be a little higher on Simpson than you are, and part of the reason is one, my value on defense. A lot of these guys that you want to slot in for your first baseman, they've got like post negative 10 zone ratings of defense every year. Does that matter? I don't know, but he can defend the position, so that's a little bit. It's not a huge thing, but it's a little bit of a plus on his side. And the other thing is, like, I look at a guy like Newman Watson, who is, in my mind, achieved everything or overachieved what his rating says he should have done throughout his career. And it comes down to the switch hitting thing. Like, so many of our big, hulking first baseman power hitters are either lefties that cannot hit right-handed batters, that can't hit left-handed pitchers at all, or righties that, don't take walks well or inconsistent. Guys like Rupert Grant, or, what's going to happen with John Mick? I'm a little worried about him. He kind of stunk up the joint last year in Madison. Is he going to be kind of one of those guys that disappoints him? With a guy like Simpson, again, we're assuming he develops, but if he's got a good shot at it, and if he does develop, he saves you a roster spot, right? You don't have to have that platoon guy in there, and he's a switch hitting power hitter. There just aren't that many of those.
Yeah, and maybe I was a little too flippant on Simpson. I really think he is a great pickup for Long Beach. I just think, the only reason I knocked that grade down a little bit is because I think that the starting pitcher they gave up, Dempster, is somebody that also can be great. And if you get a great number one pitcher versus a great first baseman, you're going to take the great number one pitcher every time. But I do like Simpson a lot. He looks like the type of guy that's going to get 600 plus at bats a year and just be a great hitter and a great, he could win a number of Zimmers at first base, and he's going to be under team control, like I said, for at least 6 more years. So, you're talking about a guy that's going to be very valuable right in the middle of Long Beach's window.
Right, and obviously that's why these teams made this deal, is that it works out perfectly for both of them in terms of when they're trying to compete and what they're going to be doing going forward. So I think where are we now with that? I'm pretty much with you on the grades. I had everybody a little bit higher. I kind of gave people A's across the boards for us. I think this is.
And I could definitely see that. I could be on board with A's all the way across the board too. I think it's a great trade for both of them. At the most, you knock it down to like a B plus for the two. So
right, yeah, and I can see that too. We're gonna skip the next couple because they're kind of dull. And then the next trade again is yours. So we've just given you the whole middle segment here is just nonstop Tyler Simmons.
The one with Vancouver, correct?
Yeah.
So this is the trade where Vancouver sent starting pitcher Tolly Crow to Jacksonville in exchange for starting pitching prospect Bert Huggill, relief prospect Antonio Torres, and left field international prospect Saiku Aoki. They've been really sour on Tolly after he got injured last year, and kind of got burned by injuries in a number of places a year ago, and we're looking to shed some players that were injury prone, that were on expiring contracts. It looked like they weren't going to be trying to negotiate with him to extend him because of that injury concern. And I am bereft of pitching talent at the major league level. So,
right.
And I have quite a few, B plus type pitching prospects to kind of unload for him. So, Tolly obviously missed a lot of last year. gives up a lot of home runs. He has kind of shored that up just a little bit, but I think it's probably a low 7 movement. Still has great stuff. Still has above average control. Great clubhouse guy, and he's a left-hander. So he kind of ticks all those boxes. He has good stamina, which is something that I don't have with good pitchers. All of my best pitchers have terrible stamina.
Right.
So he's one guy that kind of take a little bit of pressure off the bullpen. So I think he's a true number 1 starter coming over as long as he can stay healthy. On the flip side, Vancouver picks up kind of an overage, I guess, underdeveloped left-handed starting pitcher and Bert Huggill.
And I'm going to interject briefly, just so this is like one of those. I like to, I see a name that we just talked about trading a little bit ago. He's the guy you got for Totten last year. And when I see that happen, I'm like, well, let's just see what I say about this guy. And then I go find my old notes. And fortunately, this time I said the exact same thing, which was really nice. It's nice when I'm to know that I'm not completely inconsistent. And I said the same thing you did. He's kind of a mid-rotation starter prospect who, unfortunately, is not that developed for his age.
The one nice thing for Vancouver is they never have a problem with, their points to spend to kind of run some of the stuff that we do on the side,
right.
Other participation points. And being from England, he's somebody that in a few years, if he never does quite fill out the way you expect him to, they could roll the dice on an age check and maybe get a couple more years for him to develop. So that's kind of the positive with him, where if he is behind the development scale, if he never comes up to the majors, you could push that scale back a year or two if you get lucky. So there is that. Torres is kind of the same thing for me. He's underdeveloped as a pitcher at 21. He's only 5'6", He has the potential to be a plus reliever. It looks like he's taken a little bit of a hit since I traded him. He was 9.85. Now he's 8.85. But he did have a plus fastball and a plus slider potentially.
But you do wonder with that little bit of a stuff, if he ends up with 8 stuff, is that enough for a 5 control? 9 he might be, but right.
Yeah, it might not be, but that's kind of one of those things where he is still young enough. He might be able to get a little bit of velocity back, and if he doesn't, then it does kind of change things. When he was 9.85, I thought kind of the same thing about Huggill as Torres. Again, he's Puerto Rican. If you get to him being 26 years old and he's not quite developed yet, you can always roll the dice on him as well. And then Aoki is a right-handed corner outfielder who was in my international program, and he kind of had taken a little bit of a hit. He originally was something like 7 contact and 8 gap, and I think 8 power with 5 or 6 eye.
Right.
And 7 avoid K. He was kind of a really well-rounded hitter at one point, and like a lot of those international guys, just kind of slowly kind of eroded away to what he is now, which is still an okay prospect if he develops that power. If the power develops, he will be a decent corner outfield bat. His defense is okay. He'd be a solid left fielder defensively. So I don't think the return is really great for Vancouver. I think that they, maybe if they were a little more patient, they could have gotten more, but they could have also gotten less. Maybe I went out and got another pitcher somewhere else, and that deal kind of, evaporated. So they had to strike. They get 3 guys who, if everything falls, they could develop, but they are some guys with some pretty major warts. So I would say for myself, organizationally for Jacksonville, I probably gave it about a B just because of all the talent, the potential talent that was lost. They pick up a good player, but it's a 29-year-old that had an expiring contract, that had an injury the year before. So you're talking about a guy that could, maybe be gone. Since then I've signed him, but he could have been gone after this year. But talent-wise, it was an A for sure. Great pitcher to pick up. Vancouver, talent-wise, I would say probably a C plus B minus because you lose such a good pitcher. They have quite a few pitchers already, but to lose a really good pitcher and to not get a great prospect in return, organizationally, I probably would say like a B plus because those guys have such big warts, it's not into the A range.
No, and my grades are about the same. I'm a little bit a half letter different anywhere else. I actually I think I gave you a little bit better of an organizational grade than you did for yourself with this, because I think you gotta I don't know that I would really call Tully Crow an ace, but that's a debate that Kyle and Steve and I like to have. What's an ace, right? Like what makes somebody an ace? But he's in that discussion. If he's and you didn't give up much for it. You did give up prospects. They are talented. They do have stuff, but like it's hard to pick up a pitcher like that, and you're not going to miss the stuff that you gave up. Like you're probably not going to, and that's not that easy to do. So I thought it was a pretty good move for you organizationally.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I kind of feel the same way you do about. I don't think Crow's an ace. I think he's a number one pitcher. I would say he's probably one of the 30 best pitchers in the league, but I reserve an ace designation for like a top 10 starting pitcher, somebody that is going to be the number one pitcher on just about any team that he's a part of.
Right.
That's Diaz, that's Nelson Ramirez, that's those types of guys are aces.
I don't know. I actually don't know if Diaz is anymore. I think his stuff, similar to with Conch when we were talking about it, did his stuff used to be 11 or even close to 12? I'm not sure Diaz's stuff is what it used to be. Which, again, I don't understand. That's another point about Tully Crow, because we mentioned Diaz's stuff. Diaz has 3 pitches. What are they? Cutter, change, sinker? I mean, it's not a sinker. Cutter, change. I don't remember what the third one is. Splitter, right. They're all rated 9. His stuff, I think, when I did the math, the worst it could be was 11.5. Like when you just make the player when he was at his peak. And Tully Crow has a 10 fastball, 9 change, 9 cutter, right? Or is that a curveball? Curve. His stuff's a 9. Like, what is the game engine like? I don't. You just look at this stuff and you're just like, what's going on? But that's whatever, fine, who cares?
It must be that curveball just not quite amounting to as many strikeouts, they say, as a cutter would.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's bizarre.
What's the velocity? What's the velocity on Diaz? He's over 100, so
yeah,
that
he's
could
over
be
100,
where the difference is.
And that could be what it is too. But it's again, it's just kind of funny.
But that would also kind of lead down the road that you were going and saying that maybe Diaz is now a low 10 instead of an 11.
Right. And yeah, I think I could make, like when I was doing the whole, okay, these pitches are 9, but if they're at the top of 9, what are they? And if they're at the bottom 9, and when I put them all at the top of 9, I think his stuff came out as just over 12, and that was kind of exciting. But I'm sure it wasn't that high, but it was kind of neat to think I might have a pitcher with 12 stuff. Anyway, I think the next one we're moving on to, we might have finished do we have any of the actual kind of more interesting deals left, or have we cut through all of the deals? And
well, there is one.
News?
I mean, you probably don't have notes on it yet. The one that just happened recently.
Yeah, I might save that for like a starter off on the next time. We can just knock out the rest of these really quickly here, just because it'll give us a talking point. And I haven't looked at it at all. I remember looking at it, but briefly. But I don't know if I want to get into pulling that apart yet. I'm actually kind of sleepy. I'm switching back to a day schedule because I'm going on vacation, so I just don't know which way's up right now. Normally I sleep all day and work at night. So why don't are you okay if we just knock out some of these other ones? Just go through them really quick and maybe call it a day. So let's see. We skipped. We didn't skip that one.
So the first one, Montreal, Brooklyn?
Right, Montreal, Brooklyn. And this is where Montreal picked up third baseman Ramon Ayala. Brooklyn got center fielder Alejandro Banuelos and shortstop Anastasio Rivera. And essentially what I saw here, Ramon Ayala, he's a known quantity. He's 29 years old. He's kind of a platoon right-handed third baseman. He's pretty much only been used in a platoon, but he's done that with a 95 OPS plus, which is solid at third base. You can play that. And Brooklyn got Alejandro Banuelos, he's a 26-year-old switch hitter. got a decent ability to take a walk and not strike out. He's fast. He can defend all the outfield positions. And this was, again, one of those kind of, I need this, you need this. Montreal had lost some third baseman through free agency and lost some infield depth, and Brooklyn didn't have an outfield depth, and that's exactly what this move was. And then, Al is a little bit better player, so Montreal flipped Anastasio Rivera, who is a 17-year-old shortstop prospect who actually is lumped a bit. I think he had a 6 contact at the time, but he's still a righty with 6 contact, which in the infield might be okay, but the exciting thing about him is that he has the defensive fundamentals to defend every infield position well, and so that's a nice little player.
Yeah, if he was able to keep that 6 contact and turns into somebody that can play all infield positions, he's a nice utility bat to have on the bench. Banuelos is, an extra outfielder. I don't know if he's quite good enough to play center field, and I don't know if he has enough contact to reach 300 on base percentage, even though he's got a good eye. Amaya, was somebody that I kind of looked at. I don't have a third baseman. I don't trust my third baseman as far as I can throw him right now, but he is a great defender. So I kind of looked at Amaya, but in the end, I just couldn't get over the 4 range. I just couldn't give up such a good defender at third base for a guy that wasn't much of an improvement with the bat. But I mean, for Montreal, I think they don't really give up that much. They pick up somebody that fits their system. Brooklyn has, just a ton of infielders that aren't very good defenders, and they are able to pick up something for them. So and that's these are little moves that keep the league going and moving players around, and it's just nice to see when people find little things that fit what they need. If it's okay with you, I'm going to blast through these next 2 in hopefully about a minute because there's not much to say on them, and then because I think there is something to say about some of the other smaller deals. Louisville and Jackson made a deal that was relief pitcher John Bullard. This is you again. Maybe you want to say a little bit, but it was John Bullard and I can't even read what I wrote. Was it Jose Carlos Solis? Yeah, and essentially Louis took a guy from you in the Rule 5 and then wanted to be able to keep him on the roster, and so you flipped something. He flipped you something basically so he could put him in the minors, right? That's all it was. He actually took him last year, and we were talking prospects, and before we got a deal done, he had to open up a roster spot and ended up sending him back, and we just never completed the deal, and then I left him exposed, and he took him again, and it was kind of like, the genius calls me back up and says, so what about this guy? Can we do it? It's like, yeah, so it's not much of a deal. I think, he's thinking he has a reliever that's very similar. I think a lefty 10-5-5 guy that he played for a number of years, and I can't think of his name right now.
Ron Clulo,
so I think. He's hoping that, Bullard can turn into that, I would assume.
I think Clulo had 6 ratings though when he was any good. He did play a little bit with a 5, and he was okay with that. And I think he could be a loogie if he works out, but probably not, especially since the slider's only 5 out of 9. So I don't know what he's going to do with that. Solis will never be anything. He doesn't have the control to make his mediocre stuff work, and that's no. The next one's Edmonton Charm City. This is the deal where basically. Charm City had more second base talent coming up. Jeffrey Verdocki was the person that was going to be like an EBA import draft that we were all excited about. He wasn't a great defender, but he looked like he might be able to hit a little bit at second base, even though he's a right-handed bat. Because he had that, 6 contact but 9 eye and could run, and so that's something we were looking forward to when he was available. But then the expansion draft happened. He ended up in Charm City, and he played like ass last year. That's pretty much just what happened. Charm City might have sold short on him. I mean, he's got 6 contact and 9 eye at second base, and he's fast. Maybe he can play a little bit better, but he's not a great defender. I'm not trying to say that they've made a horrible mistake here. And they had more second base help coming up, so they flipped him to Edmonton, who sent back a 19-year-old right-handed pitcher whose name I cannot read what I wrote. I think it's Tamu Naju.
It's good enough.
He's a lottery ticket, right? 9.66, 4 pitches. He's going to probably have a plus right split because 2 of his 4 pitches are a curveball and a slider, and he's essentially a lottery ticket. The interesting thing about this trade is Verdocki maybe could have played for Edmonton, but then they got Murillo on a cheap deal in free agency, and so now he won't play there either.
Although Murillo might play the outfield.
That's not a good idea. No, it just isn't. Like you can hide him in the corners, but I don't know about putting a 5 in center field. That's just frightening.
Yeah, I like Verdaki a lot too. I just couldn't get over the defense
Right.
to be able to give up enough to get him. You know what, Najee, I think is potentially a decent reliever. I think down the road if he doesn't turn into a starting pitcher with 9.99 fastball, slider, curveball. He's somebody that could really dominate right-handed batters out of the bullpen. But Verdaki. The way I look at it with Charm City is it's better to trade a guy a year too soon than a year too late. So they trade him now for somebody that has potential to maybe be a fifth starter or a good reliever instead of waiting a year and he sucks again and then nobody wants him
And you
for
get
anything.
nothing, right? Yeah, and that's a good way of looking at it. I wanted to talk about. We're not going to do these in order, but there's a series of Vancouver moves here, or there's 2 Vancouver trades that I just don't quite get. The first one will be Vancouver and Charm City, and this is when Vancouver traded Jeff French, who's a 27-year-old, right-handed reliever, 9.76 ratings. I think his career ERA plus is like 184, which is partially helped by Vancouver's park. I mean, his FIP's 3.27, which is still solid. He's got a couple years of team control left, and they flipped him to Charm City for Matthew Brown as a 20-year-old lefty with 9.76 ratings. Although he was 9.77 when he was traded, and so maybe the left-handedness makes him a little bit better. But he's not. If I'm Vancouver, like I don't know if they felt they had a huge surplus of relief pitching, but my question is kind of why. Like why are you trading a 27-year-old guy with team control who's pitched well for you for a prospect who may not develop when you're in the middle of a divisional race? I don't really understand this. And they do have a surplus of some of these middling relievers, but I wouldn't call French middling. He's been reliable. And the reason I bring this up is there's another trade they made a few days later, and that's where they sent Felix Alvarado, who's 26 and 10.76, and he's got an ERA plus of 163 over his career. He's got another year. He's not expensive. He's got another year of ARB, and they sent him. Is this you again?
Yeah.
God damn it. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I shouldn't. For those of you who I just offended, I apologize. I should not curse in the names of religions. For Flannery, right? Who's a 19-year-old, 8.67. Like, I don't get that move at all. Like, I don't know what Brett's doing, and I'm not saying that. Like, again, Brett probably has a plan. He probably has something in mind of what he's doing here, but I don't know what it is. And not knowing what it is, it looks to me like if you put those 2 deals together, that's like 2 solid, reliable arms out of your bullpen when you're in the middle of a divisional race for not much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he just thought that he could get better in free agency if he needed to. I mean, he does have a lot of pitchers.
He does.
Sure, but
he has this endless amount of these guys that are kind of not great but solid. He does have that.
But yeah, like you said, you are giving up kind of very known quantities, especially with Alvarado. That's a guy that's thrown 350 innings in his career almost. I mean, that's quite a few innings as a reliever. And he's great for their park with his high stuff and, not great movement. I don't know how well he'll do. Hopefully he'll do well enough in Jacksonville. But, I'm not sure why he traded both of them. I thought when I saw the Charm City trade, I thought I was done, that I wasn't going to be able to get the second one. I thought he was just going to deal one of the 2 guys. So,
it's interesting. There's a couple more deals. I don't think we're going to talk about them. They're not that exciting. I'm not going to talk about your Austin Stinson Bartolo Cruz deal. That's Louisville was saving money. That's what that was. And then Jorge Sierra probably will never matter. Vancouver got him from Carolina, and I shouldn't say will never matter. He just kind of looks like one of those guys that you're never really happy to have at first base. Carolina might have got a little less than they should have for him, but they were unclogging their first base hole. And that's it, man. We got through the entire offseason were the trades. There are a couple of interesting ones in there, a lot of middle minor moves like there are every offseason. It's a couple head scratchers, but again, I think the offseason you see more head scratchers. Like in the middle of the season, it's always about need, and you can always like put things in the context of need. Where the offseason, deals, there's more moving parts, and there's more a guy looking at his franchise long term and thinking, if I do this now, I'll have this later, and so the deals, you can look at them and not really know what was going through their mind, even though they did have a plan.
Well, yeah, and you get teams that really are in the middle of a rebuild that all of a sudden think that by picking up one extra guy, they're going to be at the top of their division, kind of like when I picked up Workman a few years ago, where it's they throw away a bunch of prospects when they don't need to, and you kind of scratch your head. But
yeah, I might be trying to trade Workman soon. I don't know what to make of it, because I don't think he's lumped tremendously. Like when I got him, he was still 7 contact, 9 eye, and he's been bumping back and forth 6 contact, 7 contact, 6 contact. So he's getting older. My plan with him was always, when he finally loses that little bit of range, just move him to first. I'm not a park where you're going to hit home runs, so I don't care. And if he was still a 7 contact, 9 eye first baseman with a little speed, I'll take that. That's fine. So I signed him to a $10 million a year deal for a few years, and I may have to try to trade him to somebody where he's not getting his offense nerfed so much, because I don't know that that's going to work out anymore. But we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, especially if you find somebody that doesn't care about the defense quite as much. But
right?
Because it's going to be tough if he can't be an 800 OPS or close to a first baseman. That'll be tough to be able to.
I think you can, and that's the problem though with selling stuff out of my park, is getting people to understand and believe that you're adding 50, if not more, points to your OPS for every player you take out.
Right.
Out of
I meant
California.
for you, just for you to have putting him at first base.
Right. Well, dude, seriously, I'll take 780 OPS first baseman some years. It's so incredibly miserable playing in this stadium. But as we were talking,
I thought that catcher that Vancouver just traded, is it Carrillo?
Yeah.
That he would have been a good one for one of those spacious parks with a lot of power and a lot of eye.
Well, that's what I'm starting to learn. So I think my offense is, even though as we were talking before the show, I'm not hitting anything this year, but I think I'm starting to figure out that I need guys that walk and run. Those things don't matter. They don't get nerfed by park effect. They're gonna happen no matter what. And it's just not working out so far this year, which is why Workman was such an enticing player. But if he lumps a little bit, he could be a real problem for me. I don't know.
Sure.
We're rambling now. People are sure happy to listen about my Workman issues. Anyway, I am very tired and goofy, and I apologize for the disorganizedness of this. But at least we know we have a nice, big, exciting deal to lead off the next one, and we're kind of caught up, and that feels kind of good.
Yeah, that's nice. Be able to actually spend time doing some shorter ones for everybody.
Right. So I think that's pretty much it. As usual, we'll have the time marks in there for when various trades are if you want to skip to a particular one. And as always, we're looking for more co-hosts because, I don't know. I'll admit I hate Tyler Simmons. That's really what's going on here. I just can't stand
He's trying to kick me to the curb.
Yeah, I just want you out of here. It's been no, it's cool. No, I absolutely love having you here and enjoy talking to you. And I think this is going pretty well. I don't know how to stop these. Every single time, it's just this excruciatingly painful.
Well, yeah, the professional guys, they have all the stuff that they have to plug, their books and their other shows and where to catch them and their social media handles and all that kind of stuff that they can kind of plug to end the show. But we're just kind of a bunch of slappies. So
somebody just starts playing music over them, and eventually they get tuned out. But
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let me go find the stop recording button, which is somewhere right around here.